to a Deadpan Discourse. I'm Dan. Deadpan Dan. Yeah. Anyways, with me are some Deadpanians. Dead panties? Panites?
Dead panties.
No.
Take it back. Joining me is Brandy.
Hi.
Maria.
Hello.
And Stef.
Hello.
Hi. I broke you guys already.
Yeah, you did.
Anyways, so I've asked the three of you guys to join me for a little chat today to talk about the console wars. And I do this with air quotes very enthusiastically because the console wars to me are not a thing, but it's a very hot topic in the world of gaming. And I wanted to bring you three ladies on to talk about just the craziness that is this thing that happens on social media, because each of you, I think, has good, unique... What was that stuff?
He's assuming we're ladies.
Or that we even wear panties.
I assume all and nothing at the same time.
And I now want branded dead panties.
Dead
Dead
panties.
panties, please.
Maria, get on
That'd be a
that.
thing. Yes.
What?
We need dead panties.
She's an artist.
Yeah.
Anyways, I wanted to talk to you guys with your unique perspectives and experience when it comes to the gaming consoles, because of your breadth of experience and knowledge, as well as the fact that most of you guys here at least have hands-on and or experience in some form or fashion with all consoles or PC in any form. And it's just... I wanted to start off, I'll just go like this. Let's go around the table and everybody give like a brief history of like your gaming experience background and like the consoles you have and you've played on. Just like a quick overview, and I'll start with Maria.
Hi, yeah. I've been gaming most of my life. I started with like a really like crappy cassette run machine and just worked my way up. I went through, SNES, Mega Drive, Genesis in England, PlayStation X. I basically have all the consoles. I'm pretty much now a collector of retro consoles and stuff, so I have a pretty wide, vast experience with most of the major consoles out there.
Perfect. And I'll go to Brandy.
Well, I've been gaming for 40 some odd years.
40.
I'm just kidding. ColecoVision was my first console, so I've been through Coleco. Never had Atari, never had Nintendo, but I had like the Segas, and then I had no consoles until I had my PS4, which I got because someone said, "Ooh, you like Indiana Jones? You'll like Uncharted." So yeah, that's why I got the PS4. And then when Dan moved in, he's like, "I've got all these games on Xbox. You need to get an Xbox." So got an Xbox. So I have both now, PlayStation and Xbox and PC. I did a lot of PC gaming. So.
Perfect. And Steph?
Well, I remember going to a friend's house when I was young, when the Atari 2600 was the big thing, and playing hours of Space Invaders and things like that, and going up to the arcades and playing there. But the first console we had in the house was my brother's Nintendo NES system, and I played lots of hours on that too in my teenage years. But like in my college years, I played Sega Genesis was the thing. I bought a TV. A friend had the Sega Genesis, and we would get together and play. So that's basically the earliest experiences. I did have a PlayStation 2 at one point, but it wasn't until much later that I went back to a console, because I had PCs. And there were games available for PC, so I played for years on PC until I did an article about Xbox Live for howstuffworks.com, and I was like, get an Xbox. And so I got an Xbox 360 and have since got an Xbox One. And last year I used rewards from work to get a PlayStation 4, and I had the PC. So yeah, if there's a game I like and It's restricted to a certain console. I consider whether or not it's worth purchasing the console. I didn't buy the PlayStation 4 though. I waited and got it for reward money instead. I probably wouldn't have bought it outright because I can play the Xbox and PC, but yeah.
So here's a question for everybody. Who here has a Switch?
Me.
I had one for a little while.
Okay, you had one.
Sold
So, and Brandy has one by osmosis.
Played yours. Yeah.
I know osmosis isn't the word for that, but I thought it'd be funny. So, anyways,
A lot of people do that though.
I wanted to just hit on the fact that most people have a Switch as well, regardless.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just think that's a fun fact that most households also have a Switch. It's like I have a PlayStation and a Switch, or I have an Xbox and a Switch. But anyways, quick history on myself. I've been gaming as long as I can remember. Grew up with an original Nintendo, got the Super Nintendo. Had friends that played Genesis, so that was the majority of my experience with Genesis. Then I got the Nintendo 64 when that came out, and then a friend of mine had a PlayStation 1, which at the time I didn't really care about because as far as I knew, the only games you could play on PlayStation were sports games, and I didn't care until I played Resident Evil. And then I said, crap, I need a PlayStation because Resident Evil is amazing, and I love this genre immediately. So then I got the PS1, eventually the PS2, and then of course it was just this notion of like I want to play anything and everything I can get my hands on. So I bugged my parents and I saved my pennies and I got the PlayStation 2 when it came out and the GameCube. And then Microsoft decided they were going to make a game console. And I went, what does Microsoft know about making video game systems? And one summer after the Xbox had come out, I had a particularly good paycheck from my part-time job as a teenager and thought, how can I burn this money fast? So I went to the EB Games and fully prepared to just stocking up on new PlayStation 2 games. And I thought, well, let's see what this Xbox has. And I saw Halo and I went, this looks really cool. You know what? I have enough money. I'm going to go ahead and buy an Xbox. And I bought an Xbox and I bought Halo. And that's how I spent my entire summer playing Halo. Never looked back at my PlayStation. At least that summer. Anyways, I also then proceeded to buy every console I can get my hands on, and now, as Brandy said, we have everything, and that's just because I like to play everything. So this leads me to want to sit down and chat with you guys. Maria and I had a little bit of a chat about this the other day. Brandy and I talk about this all the time because it's a hot topic that we discuss. There's this weird stigma in the world, in social media, what have you, about the hate of another game console. And I think it's weird, and I think it's silly. And like I said at the top of the episode, it's the console wars, which to me it's a console wars amongst fans. It's not a real console wars amongst the companies. Like, Stef, you mentioned before the podcast or this episode about Nintendo and Sega back in the day. Those were real console wars. Nintendo and Sega were literally at each other's throats. I don't think that's happening now. I think it's just people being jerks at this point. So I wanted to throw it out to each of you guys to talk about your perspectives and takes on this. And I think the fact that you're all women, as far as I know, can add to the conversation. Because if nothing else, that's another issue in gaming.
Well, you started with the ladies, and ladies has
there's a connotation there.
I've never been confused for a lady.
But anyways, that's another
Dan,
factor that we might have to save for another episode to talk about women in gaming and that issue, which is a whole nother bag of worms.
Oh yeah.
So let's just kind of give your general perspective of how you see this mentality, that whether you see it on Twitter or what have you, and I'll leave it to whoever wants to jump in and go for it.
I personally think that if you really like games, you should like games regardless of what the console is. Like, I I primarily grew up with the PlayStation. That was my first console, and then I moved to PlayStation 2, PlayStation 1. And for me, being a PlayStation person was a familiarity thing. And, going to Xbox was like unknown territory for me. So I used to just stay with PlayStation. But it was nothing, I never considered myself like something wrong with Xbox. I was never against Xbox. It's just that it was kind of like the devil I know rather than the devil I don't type deal. And the problem is the consoles are so expensive, you have to commit. A lot of people have the option to say, I can afford both. So it's one of those one over the other one. And so this kind of weird brand thing it has. But like, I got the PS5, and when I got the PS5, I knew I was going to get an Xbox Series X. If I got an Xbox Series X, I knew I was going to get PS5 because I just love games, and so I always say you can't be a game Nazi. If you like games, you have to like games. And so whatever console they're on. So to me, I'm just like, I just want to own all of the things,
Right.
and I'm not dedicated to any brand. It's like if I want a game and it's on an Xbox, I'll buy an Xbox. If I want a PlayStation, I want a PlayStation. So I just want games. Give me games.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean that's my take on it. It's like if you like playing games, just play the game. It doesn't matter what it's on, whether it's PC, PlayStation, Xbox. Like I primarily play my Xbox now, and it has nothing to do with like it's a preference for the controller. I don't know what it is. Like I like playing on the Xbox controller versus the PlayStation controller. It's weird.
Yeah.
And then like I think Xbox and Microsoft are doing things right as far as business goes. Like I mean, you've got all the games right there on Xbox. Like Game Pass. You've got all the games. Like the majority of the games. Like you can get just and I didn't ever feel that PlayStation did that because they were like, no, these are my games.
Well, that's to be honest. I bought my PS5 and I own maybe 4 games for my PS5, but I play my Xbox Games Pass more than my PS5 because it's like because there's a lot more like availability there for the Xbox. The games doesn't mean I prefer Xbox over PS5 because I love the controller of the PS5. So it's just the availability, and so right now there's not many exclusive PS5 games out there. So I want to play games, and so if it's still available on Xbox, I'm going to play it on the Xbox. Doesn't mean I like one over the other. So it's just Yeah,
I feel the same way. I play because I want to play the game, and I wanted to play Uncharted for years. I didn't have a PlayStation, so I just said, well, if the opportunity comes available for me to get a PlayStation one day, then, that's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to play Uncharted because they made it an exclusive. But I'm not going to buy the console just for that because everything I do want to play other than that is on the Xbox as well. So it wasn't a question. The big question ended up coming into play when I started playing more games that were online and required collaborating with friends, playing together, because then I felt like I had to select the console that they were playing on. And so I actually now own Destiny 2 for PC, Xbox, and PlayStation, simply because I have friends on all 3 of those platforms that play. So
come on, cross-platform people. Please cross-platform.
But notice that, yeah, exactly. We'll get into it later, I'm sure, Dan, but I think, cross-play is going to be the way of the future because, gaming companies are less inclined to do
want
exclusive.
Everything to be cross-play at this point.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, even the way Destiny does it to where, like, you can basically
cross-save.
Cross-save. Like, even there, like, okay, well, my friends from PlayStation are playing, so I can, like, cross-save over to PlayStation and play, pick up where I left off. Like, at least that, I mean, if nothing else. But then, you have to buy the games on every single console. That's the thing that sucks.
Brandy and I know the struggle of owning the game on multiple platforms very well because we have Star Wars Battlefront 2 on PlayStation, Xbox, and PC just so we can play everywhere because Brandy absolutely loves that game.
Shooty McBlastface. Yes.
Shooty McBlastface. that's definitely up there as far as a struggle. I want cross-play enabled on everything, and it's like I can't even count how many times I've bought a game for Xbox, and then I might buy it for PlayStation because I have friends who play on PlayStation, and they're like, well, come play with me. And it's like, but I already bought, I have it on Xbox. And they're like, well, I don't have an Xbox. You have a PlayStation, so you buy it. And it's like, okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but the thing I also want to hit on here too is if you go onto Twitter, and sometimes this is horrible, I have to like unfollow people on Twitter because before I know it, my feed will start blowing up with all of this toxicity, and it's like, why? Like, one of the things I struggled with was people taking those Halo screenshots when they showed the trailer for Halo Infinite and smearing it all over the internet and saying, look how bad this game looks. That screenshot they were sharing was a single frame zoomed in by like 1,000 on a character who had its helmet knocked off, which you're not meant to see their face really without the helmet on. And it's happening in motion. Like, I found that moment. I went through that trailer and I'm like, where did they pull this screenshot from? So there's these people out there that are like, I don't know if they're just trying to stir the pot. I don't know if they're trying to fight some made-up war, but they're taking things and blowing them way out of proportion. Like, here's a screenshot from a cutscene on a PlayStation game, and here's a frame from a Halo,
an action shot.
An action shot that's running at 60 frames per second minimum, and you're gonna zoom way in on it, and it's like, that's just childish. That's you're being completely unfair and unjust, and that kind of stuff just irks me, and I have to like,
yeah.
why?
And I felt like that when I noticed that when Resident Evil 8 The Village came out a little bit, and I think we spoke about this a little, that the PlayStation 5 version had 5 stars across the board, and then the Xbox version was like downgraded, and they were like, well, it's crap, and it's all this sort of stuff. And we were like, was this just a bunch of PlayStation fanboys just voting it down just because it was on Xbox? Yeah, they were just like, oh, it's on Xbox. Nobody wants an Xbox. And I saw this with the next-gen console wars that have been happening with people trying to buy PS5, and they're like, oh, well, the Xbox is, you can get an Xbox because nobody wants it because it's crap. And it's like, what are you talking about? It's like, I have both, and they are both equally as good.
We have 2 Xbox Series X.
Yeah.
I have played the PlayStation 5 one time.
Yeah.
Once.
Yeah.
That's it.
And so, I mean, I play my PlayStation 5 a lot, but it's like the Xbox, they're just as good as each other. You know, so it's just, I don't know.
Absolutely. I only have 2 games for my PS5 right now that are PS5 games. I have Returnal and I have Demon's Souls, and they're both great. I played the bejesus out of Demon's Souls. I'm really loving Returnal. It's a great game. But I still have so many little bits when it comes to the PlayStation that drives me. Like, it just hit me the other day. I had the PlayStation on, and I was looking at, like, I have like Resident Evil games on the PlayStation, and on the PS4 I had all my Resident Evil games in one folder, and they were all right there. And then I went, wait a minute, where are folders? What happened to folders? Why is folders not a thing anymore on PlayStation? They're just gone. It's a big cluttered mess on the PS5, and it's like, okay, this is a simple firmware thing. They can fix that down the road. But to me, that's the little thing of like, why isn't it just there? Because the Xbox has retained their dashboard. Whether you love it or hate it, I personally really like the Xbox dashboard. I think it's neat. I think it's clean. I can keep things very organized. As a person with OCD, that drives me crazy when things
and it crosses over to the PC too.
Yeah,
like
everything
if you're
does.
looking at those same games. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't hate on the PlayStation in any form or fashion. The PlayStation for me for a long time, pretty much since the PS2, the PlayStation has become my exclusive machine. I get a PlayStation to play the exclusive games on it because there are great exclusives on the PlayStation you cannot deny. And otherwise, this is the other thing for me, the controller. The PS5 controller is definitely way better. It's bigger, it's thicker, it's closer to the shape of an Xbox controller. But as a person who loves first-person shooters, I've always hated all of the PlayStation controllers when it came to shooters. It felt really weird. It felt really uncomfortable. I didn't like when the two sticks were close together. I like the offset sticks on the Xbox. It just feels better. And for whatever reason, I can play the same shooter on an Xbox as I play on the PlayStation, and it just feels funky to me.
Yeah.
So that was always a big
I felt that way
preference.
about Assassin's Creed. I always get Assassin's Creed on Xbox now just so I can use the controller.
You know what? When I got my Xbox and my PlayStation 5, and it was this big unveiling moment when I got my PS5 and I took it out of the box and it was like, ah, you know, it was like this monolith of greatness that came out of the box. And I picked up the controller and I'm like, oh yeah. So, and then my Xbox Series X arrived and I opened it and I'm like, is that it? It was like literally a box. And I'm like, okay, it's a box. It's a box. It's a box. And I'm like, and then I got the controller out, and I'm like, it's just the same controller as the one. It didn't have that factor, and I think it was more of a like they were trying to stay with what we knew worked, and it was just improve it. But it was just I was so impressed by the shininess of the PS5 that I was just like,
I have very strong
Same.
thoughts on this subject, Maria, because in your perspective, I know where you're coming. You're talking about the insane look of the PlayStation
The look,
5 and
yes.
the changes and
Yeah.
this new
Yes.
amazing drastic look, and then the Xbox is
It
very
wobbles when you put it down.
bang, like it's very. But the packaging.
yes.
The packaging was the other way around for me.
Yes, the Xbox had this big like
The Xbox
treasure
was
chest.
gorgeous. Yeah, it was like opening a chest. And
Yeah,
the
my
Xbox was wrapped
PlayStation,
in this
I'm just
sleek
like-
material.
Yeah.
The PlayStation was in cardboard recycled material.
Yes, it
just
was.
slapped in there. You had to like drag it out like you're unboxing a fridge.
Yes.
It was so unceremonious. And I'm like, this is awful packaging.
Yeah.
Anyways,
exactly.
complete
Xbox,
opposite, but
yeah.
different things we're talking about. We're talking about presentation versus
Yeah.
the design and look
Well,
of the
Apple-
console.
Apple's known for that as well. That presentation, that unboxing is this.
It's the
you know.
experience. It feels expensive. You know, you get an
Yes.
iPhone and it slides off and you're like, oh. And it's like, oh yeah.
I've never
Hell,
had
even
an
just a
iPhone.
new pair of headphones.
Right?
I don't have Apple anything, so
Yeah, I have two. I have a MacBook for work, and I have a personal MacBook, and then I have on my second iPhone at this point.
I'm on my second iPhone. I switched to iPhone back in 2010. I forget now. Anyways, back to the conversation of the console war. One of the other points that I wanted to discuss was to anyone out there that may or may not listen to this, like when it comes to the whole like Xbox should give up, PlayStation's the best, Xbox should just stop trying.
No.
We as consumers, the people who are spending the money on the video games, do not want that.
No.
And
competition is the best.
if you don't understand that, you are damning us all.
Mm-hmm.
You are damning
Yeah.
us to live in a monopoly where only one company is in control, and we lose creativity, we lose experimentation. Look at how
And everything
huge
gets
indie games are now.
expensive.
Indie
Everything
games are
gets expensive and everything's meh.
Yeah.
But you don't have any other choice.
And one of the things that I wanted to discuss on this was a trend in gaming as far as consoles. If you go all the way back in the day, there was Nintendo and Sega. They were the two big ones. But it was mostly Nintendo was in power for the most part. Like, you had your Sega fans, you had your Nintendo fans, but Nintendo really kind of dominated the market. And then after the PlayStation 2 came out, Sony took dominance, clearly. That's one of the best-selling consoles of all time. And then the Nintendo did the GameCube, which was kind of like, nobody knew what to make of it. And then Xbox came out, which that was Microsoft's first foray into the field. But then we got the 360 and we got the PS3. And the 360, you ask anyone, the 360 won that console generation as far as being the best console to have back then. Yes, it had its problems. Yes, it had issues. But what console doesn't? They're not flawless.
Yeah.
The PlayStation 3 came out at $600. the president of Sony told people to get a second job to pay for getting a Sony PlayStation 3. And it was like, all right, well, screw you. I'm going to go play on the Xbox, which is only $300, and it came HD out of the box. Anyways, then we got the PS4 and the Xbox One, and things flip-flopped. Anyone who knows that story as far as the Xbox One faltered at the beginning, the PlayStation 4 took a clear dominance, and Sony's been riding that high since then. I think, and I hope, it's a time for a flip again. I want Microsoft to take dominance again. Not to say Sony's going to fail, not to say I don't think Sony's going to still do great things, but to have that altering power struggle makes each company work harder for the next generation.
It does. Yeah.
Like Xbox is killing themselves to give us greatness. And it's showing. You see it with Game Pass. You see it with the Xbox Series X. You see it with the studio acquisitions. This is Xbox and Microsoft making up for how bad they messed up last generation. And rightly so.
Yeah. I mean, I want rivalry in the consoles. I want the console war, because it makes, there's that whole release thing when you had like the PS5 coming out and then the Xbox, and it's like, what do they have to offer? And then it's like, oh, their controller, and Xbox are like, oh shit, they've got the haptic feedback, and then Xbox is probably like, I'm working on something myself for the next one, and then the next one, and and then there's Nintendo in the background being like, random controllers, yay!
Nintendo is so just doing their own thing; they don't care anymore.
They're just
they march to the beat of their own drum. They don't care, and they still do great. So,
but that's the thing, Nintendo has been this kind of under secret powerhouse, because they've been the ones just throwing the spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. And I think
they're the longest lasting console franchise.
But I think they're the ones that are not afraid to try something new. And I think the other consoles are like, we need to do what they did, because they're coming out with the funky things. You had the Wii came out with the silly remotes, and it was your mother's console. They're like, oh, I want to play tennis. But then you got PlayStation, like they've got something there. So it's healthy to have that rivalry between companies.
For sure.
It makes it better. Yeah. So, yeah.
And that's why PlayStation's even pursuing VR at this point and doing PSVR, and that birthed from them trying to compete with the Wii when they started doing like the PlayStation Move. And Xbox did the Kinect, which I personally really loved the Kinect. I think it sucks that it got so much flack and it ended up getting put to the wayside. That as a Xbox fan, and when the Xbox One came out, I had to do the pack-in deal. You had to get a Kinect with the Xbox One originally. But the Kinect offered so many cool features back then. It had built-in voice command. It had built-in body tracking. I used to do like workout programs on there. I would come into my apartment after coming home from work, and I would, as I'm walking through the living room, I'd be like, Xbox on. Xbox turns on, TV turns on. I go, Xbox, go to Netflix. Bang, it goes to Netflix. Like, go ahead, play, whatever. I did all that without even looking at the Xbox or the TV or a controller. And that was great. Cool. And it's gone. Yeah. You can't do it anymore. And it pisses me off.
Yeah. I went out of my way to find a Kinect. Yeah, so I didn't get Kinect with my Xbox, so I went out of the way to find it because I want to experience those little silly things that game consoles have. Like, whether it's a failure or not, I want to see it. I want to see what the new games are about. I want to try VR. I want to try these things. And so if a console has it, I want to give it a go. I want to try the shitty little race car thing that they've got on the Switch now. I want to try it, because I'm like, I might play it once, but I'm like, I want to see what the future is. And I want to see, even if it's not the future, I want to see where they were trying to go. Because I love games. I love all consoles. And so I want to see where them seeds are, so.
Yeah. That's literally why I bought a 3DS when they came out. It's like, these things are way too expensive, but I want to know what they're doing, so.
Yeah, just thinking about the fact that, there's competition in the marketplace, and that's good because it keeps prices down, it keeps innovation happening, it keeps us enjoying new tech and new games constantly, and that is awesome. But when it comes to the players themselves taking sides, I feel like it's more like politics or sports where, and I'm reading, I'm doing an audiobook version of Why We're Polarized by Ezra Klein, which Klein is actually talking about why we're polarized politically, but he brings up a lot of good science and examples that come from sports and other parts of life. And that it really just comes down to, as soon as you know someone else shares some aspect of your life, you see them as part of your tribe and you see everybody else as everybody else.
Yeah.
And so we create polarization because of underlying instincts that we have. And it's just, I feel like, we say that, we don't care which console, but everyone has a little bit of a preference because of some factor.
Right.
But I think what's important is for us to take what we have in our intelligence as humans and rise above that sort of underlying tendency to want to be very tribal about it, and instead embrace the fact that competition is good, that our friends aren't always going to like the same things that we do, and not see that as a bad thing. Just it's a thing.
Yeah, I experienced that a lot with like a lot of, especially young kids in the playground and stuff. They will say, like, "Oh, I want to get a PlayStation," and then all their friends would be like, well, "PlayStation sucks. What do you want that for?" And then that raw, "I want this," will instantly go to, "I want to fit in, so I want an Xbox," and that sort of thing. And unfortunately, it's not what they really like. And there's nothing wrong with either console, but it's just there's that sense of I have to fit in, and it starts making this. Rather than just going, "Oh yeah, that's kind of cool, yeah, go for it." It's like, "Oh, you suck if you get a PlayStation. You suck if you get an Xbox." And it's kind of like that whole, you're making this tribe. It's like, West Side Story. You got like the PlayStation meeting the Xbox in the alleyway. It's just like calm down, people. Just play some games. For fuck's sake.
It creates that group mentality.
But part of it too is just social media. Yeah, it's like so easy to just from behind the keyboard just bash people, and it's like I don't know if it makes people feel powerful or what, but like it's definitely gotten worse since social media has become such a big thing. Like, when we were growing up, like we didn't hear about any of that unless it was at the playground, like Maria said. But it's like otherwise you didn't hear about that stuff. Nobody cared what console you had. It was just like, ooh, that kid has an Atari, they can play those games, let's go over there. Or that kid has a Nintendo, let's go over there and play those games. So it's just like, didn't really matter what you had. You went and hung out and played those games on those consoles. But now social media is such a big thing that, becomes easy to bash others for not liking the same thing you do, I guess.
Yeah, and it's you're doing it for the wrong reasons. It's all about that kind of, it's to be cool thing, and it's like you're missing out on a lot of opportunities that you could be having fun and having a lot of experiences, but because you're getting pushed into this whole dynamic of like, oh, I have to fit in. It's just like, just play games, play what you want to play.
Just enjoy.
Yeah. And
have fun.
I think there's, in that struggle for acceptance, just like you were saying, Maria, like as soon as we hint to our tribe that we might be different than them, there's I think maybe an underlying fear of being rejected or pushed out of the tribe. And I wonder if that's what's happening on social media, is that we're trying so hard on social media to find the people that are like us, that we almost have to go one extreme or the other to find and attach to those people. If we take a medium stance on something, a moderate stance on something, we don't really fit in anywhere. There's a sense of loneliness about being moderate on things.
Yeah.
Contrast. I'm thinking back to the old days when I was a teenager in high school, and the thought of the stigma of I'm a gamer and like the way people
Yeah.
perceive that, especially my parents, you know,
Yeah.
and like adults, you know, like, you know, you're wasting your time on video games, you know, that's just a toy. And it was me as a gamer versus the adults or the people who didn't understand. But now we're getting into the same thing where it's gamers versus gamers, as opposed to, you're a gamer? Oh my god, I love games too. Like, what games do you play? Oh, that's awesome. These are the games I like to play. Awesome, you know. And now it's the contrary to that, where gaming's gotten so big that, like you said, where it's developing these little, you know, inner sanctums within the community of just gaming in a whole.
Factions.
Exactly,
Yeah.
the breaking up in the factions. And I mean, like you said, not everybody's gonna like everything, and it's I just think it's silly to not just be aware and at least somewhat sensitive to what the other people are doing, you know? Like, if you are a huge fan of Among Us, great, have fun with that game. I'm not playing it. I don't like Among Us. You know, and Among Us is a silly game. It's a ridiculous thing. It's very psychological. It's very human nature kind of play. But then on the flip side, if I want to play, you know, an amazing shooter experience, you know, I think I know where to go. If I want to play an amazing single player experience, I think I know where I want to go. But that's not to say it's a definite.
Yeah. I know. I wonder as well also, like, these consoles are so expensive now that, like, a lot of people don't have the choice to have both. So they have to pick a team. And so there's when they make that decision, especially like with us, we're adults, you know, I
They
blow
have to justify their money.
yeah,
and their spendings.
I blow a wage check, I get paid, and I'm like, oh, PlayStation, you know. So I'm just kind of, you know, I can do that though because I have the money. But there's a lot of kids that are growing up, and teenagers that it's like, Christmas is coming up. What do you want? They have to make that decision, and the half of that decision is influenced by what are my friends going to think is cool. You know, so it's like if they go, it's PlayStation or Xbox, and they're like, yeah, but if I get a Wii, I'm going to get beaten up. You know, so it's kind of it's that whole like they have to get like shoehorned into this. I have to pick a team, like I have to pick a tribe, and so once they get that, they're stuck with it because once they've told their parents, I want an Xbox, they can't go, can I have a PlayStation as well? They'll be like, get a job, get out. So it is. And once I found that when I got onto that, the track of PlayStation and committed to PlayStation, I was basically on that track, you know, because that was the console I knew. And so a lot of my friends had Xbox, and I was like, Xbox. But it's just like, but as I've got older, I've gone onto that side. But I can see where that divide happens, where it is a lot of social pressure to fit in, especially with kids, you know, like they want to be cool. So they want to.
That was me as a kid. I had all
I
had all Nintendo. I was a Nintendo kid. Like I was a Nintendo fan. I thought of myself as a fanboy at that time, and like I thought PlayStation was silly. And then it was like, oh, there are things on PlayStation that I want to play. And then it was like, okay, now I'm a multi-platform gamer. And it was around the same time that I got introduced to like PC games and started playing like Doom or Wolfenstein on PC.
LAN parties.
Hell yeah. I did. My first LAN parties were on Halo on Xbox.
Quake.
Doom
Nice.
in college.
But I wonder if for the online gaming thing influenced a lot of it as well, because like I was getting into the whole co-op gaming thing, and we were talking about the introduction of PC gaming and internet into the killing of the arcades, because people were playing with people around the world rather than playing with people next to each other. And I remember having a PS2 and then a PS3, and then the Xbox came out, the original OG Xbox came out, and it was, you can play with people over there, and everyone had the headsets on, and it was the cool thing to do. Like you could sit there looking like a spaceman with your headset on, and so everyone wanted to do that, and nobody wanted to play PlayStation anymore. And so I think that idea of the online gaming is starting to push people in that direction of what's the better kind of console, really. And so it's
Yeah.
and it also annoys me with PC and this whole PC master race thing. You know, it's
Yeah.
like,
Oh,
well,
God, yeah.
it's another one that you're just like, shut up. If anything, PCs piss me off because I'm just like, I want to play a game and I turn it on and it's like, install this driver. You have to do this thing, and I'm just like, I just want to play a fucking game. Give me.
Well, this is why I see if I can get this on camera. This little
Yes, I have one of those.
programmable keyboard.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm like, whenever I'm doing a game on PC, the first thing I do is program that thing so I don't have to use the corded keyboard.
Yeah.
And Brandy's been a long
But-
time PC gamer too.
Oh yeah.
But you know, like, it's not, and you're talking about the online aspect. I mean, you have to pay for that on every console.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, you do.
if you have, you know, Nintendo and PlayStation and Xbox, that's 3 different online services. Then if you want like the PlayStation or Xbox ability to play other games, you know, free games every month, you know, you got another subscription service on top of that. So I think it drives people to make a decision. Which
Yeah.
one am I going to put more money into?
Well, I
Yeah.
can express some insight on that, even going back to, I was one of those people that bought the original Xbox Live package for the original Xbox. And it was like,
Nice.
it was a box that you bought, and it came with a headset and like 3 months of Xbox Live. I was one of the early like founders of that program. And Xbox Live is what drove all of our online gaming nowadays, like 1000%. And
Yeah,
then if
yeah.
you go into like the 360 PS3 generation, you had Xbox Live was still Xbox Live. You still paid a monthly subscription for that service. It was $50 a month back then. And PlayStation was free. And that was a big driving factor for a lot of people, that they would buy PlayStation just because the online was free. But here's a huge caveat that I always told people back then was, the online for PlayStation sucked. Like
Yeah, it wasn't
was
good.
not good. And I can't tell you how many times I used to play Uncharted 2 online. Great game. I loved it. I loved Uncharted 2. The online was so much fun. But every single game I ever played of that, if I wasn't in a party with friends, I immediately muted everyone because everyone had open mics.
Oh god.
Everyone was screaming. Everyone had a crying baby. Everyone had a barking dog. It was just madness.
Nope.
And there
Dogs
was no
and
real,
cats
there was no
living
good
together.
matchmaking.
Mass hysteria.
Literally. There was no good matchmaking. And then it was Xbox that started doing we're going to give you free games every month.
Yeah.
Every month
Yeah,
that you pay for the
exactly.
service, we're going to give you a free game. And then PlayStation started charging for their service, but they didn't have free games in the beginning. They eventually added free games because they were like, oh, we got to match what Xbox
Yeah.
is doing. And then now, obviously, like PlayStation has PS Now, which is their like games streaming platform.
Yeah.
And then the Xbox has got Game Pass, but Game Pass is really, really grown into this amazing service and platform over the years. And they bundle it too. So you get Gold and Game Pass together. You get a good deal. Whereas PlayStation's not really doing anything on their end, which I think PlayStation's got opportunity there. I think if they change the PlayStation Now service to be a platform to play old PlayStation games, that would be the best use, I think, of PlayStation Now. It's there a little bit. You can play like old PS2 games and some PS3 games on there.
Yeah.
But if they made it
Yeah.
like a legacy platform, that would it would fix the whole debacle they had a few months ago when they were going to shut down the PlayStation 3 store, and everybody was like, "What? Why would you do that?" So,
Yeah, that's one thing that I liked when I got my Wii, because I did have a Wii for a short time. My brother ended up with the Wii, but I had it
Oh,
for a
the
short
Wii.
time.
The Wii.
Loved it.
There was far too many black eyes in my
Music,
house with the
the-
Wii.
the music is still in my head once in a while.
Do, 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 do.
we were just playing the Wii.
We were
So
bought
I
new
was
Wii
going to
games.
say, one of the first thing that I did when I got my Wii is I actually bought an old copy of Legend of Zelda. and I had Legend of Zelda on my Wii. And when I got my Switch, I was like, I wonder if that's available, and it wasn't available, and I was sad.
So kind of a funny story. I like the Switch is always my go-to for like when we're traveling or when there's no Wi-Fi or anything like that. I'm like, got Nintendo Switch. Our power went out yesterday. We was gone for like 3 hours. We didn't have any power. I got my Nintendo Switch out and I was so proud. I was like, oh yeah, Nintendo saves the day, blah, 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 blah. As soon as the power came back on, what did I do? Put the Switch down, turn the PlayStation on.
Right. There you go.
So it was just one of those, like, I felt so bad because I was like, oh, faithful friend, PlayStation, you know.
Yeah.
Like, sorry, Switch, you served your purpose.
Sorry.
I mean, the same thing happened to us when our power went out a couple of months ago, and then I went back to Breath of the Wild, and I crushed through Breath of the Wild, but I kept playing after the power came back, and I ended up putting like probably 80 hours into that game over the course of a week. So
I was going to send out a tweet because I sent out a tweet on Twitter with like, power went out, got a Nintendo Switch, Nintendo 1, boredom 0. I was going to do a follow-up switch with power back on, now playing PS5, PlayStation 2, Nintendo 1. I was like, no, I'll leave it. It's fine. No, I love the Switch. It's great. Like, it's such a great little console.
Oh, it's fantastic. But like in it's not in people's minds when you talk about like the console war, because the Switch is doing its own thing. It's still a game console.
It's its own thing.
Yeah, it's not.
It's an independent spirit.
I don't consider it a powerhouse of the console wars, but it's there. You know, it's the faithful little friend that you carry around with you. You know,
the Nintendo Switch is close to becoming one of the best-selling consoles of all time. It's getting up to the numbers of the PlayStation 2. It's going to exceed the PlayStation 2 probably in the next year or two, give or take. But people don't talk about it like they do with Xbox and PlayStation.
But everybody owns one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I don't see people posting screenshots of Switch games.
So well.
Yeah.
Remember when it was constantly sold out? Like there's still times that I have a hard time tracking one down if I was looking, shopping or whatever. But yeah, the design of having something that's both a mobile console, but also that you can dock and play on your TV on the big screen and get that beautiful quality, I think is what really kind of makes it so appealing to a cross section of people and not just a niche group who are playing some one type of game.
Yeah. And I guess that's also another thing that people within the console war seem to forget about with Nintendo Switch. Is just like it's a viable option. It's a great console, but everyone's like Xbox, PlayStation, and you're like, the Switch is great. Like, don't knock it. It's a great little thing, but again, it isn't this powerhouse. And I think because it doesn't have it's not the cool shiny brand. And I think that's what people they want the name. It's not necessarily the console itself, and they're looking at the actual console. I think it's more, I want the brand, and I want the shiny PlayStation, and I want this.
Well, that brings up the question of like brand loyalty too. Like, people get like fixated on brand loyalty. It's just like Apple and Samsung. Chevy or Ford. Like,
I mean, I know people that would buy an Apple tree because it has an apple on it. They're just kind of they're just kind of like, oh, it's white and shiny, and you're like, it's a piece of shit. But I mean, whatever. It's like I have an apple.
Yeah.
Don't sue me. but it's still that thing of like, I have to. Same thing with the phones. I have to have an Apple or I have to have a Samsung. It's like, have whatever one you want. It doesn't have to be a loyalty thing. It's just
I go wherever I'm happiest, and that was always the case. And it's with the phones, with the consoles, would have it. I initially shied away from Apple because I hated the original iPods. I thought they were terrible. I hated them. They drove me nuts. And then I got my first wheel. I hated the clicky wheel. And then I got a Zune when the Zunes came out, and I loved my Zune. I thought it was great.
Zune.
Yeah. And then I had an Android phone, and I used purely Android because I was like, screw Apple. I don't like Apple. I don't want to get sucked into that.
I had the very first one. Yeah. That was awesome.
But then I
am an Android loyalist. Sorry. I'm just kidding. I'm not loyalist. I just don't really like Apple products.
Yeah.
there's also like the selling point of things, because I spend enough time working like within like retail stores selling video games to people, and someone comes in and says like, I want to get a game console, but I don't know what I want to get. And it's like, okay, what kind of games do you like playing? I'm not sure. Like, okay, do you have friends that play? What do they play on? Do you want to play online with them? Do you plan on playing single player games only? Or do you plan on playing, multiplayer games? And it's kind of like the same thing with like the iPhones and the Androids. And I've spent enough time in my years of selling video games that I'd have to like talk to parents or talk to kids or just people who just don't know any different. And it's like, okay, why don't you look around, like see what kind of games you like. And then people come up like, I have an Xbox, I want Mario on Xbox. And it's like, no, that's not how that works. And, they're like, why not? Because it's a Nintendo game.
Can't play Gears on PlayStation.
You can't play Gears on
Sorry.
PlayStation. That literally happened to me last year. Someone who came looking for Gears of War on PlayStation, and I said, you can't play it on there. And they go, why not? I'm like, because it's a Microsoft game. And they go, oh, well, when's it coming out to PlayStation? Like,
It's not.
never.
It doesn't work that way.
Doesn't
And this
work
is a
that way.
point that I actually
Yeah.
heard, I think it was Destin Legary, who's an IGN personally, talked about this recently. He said, there's a lot of people complaining about Microsoft's acquisitions of studios. And people were complaining about Microsoft buying Bethesda because Bethesda is such a big production company. They have so many big games. They're on every platform. And people are saying, like, well, they have to let those games come to PlayStation still because they've been on PlayStation. And it's like, okay, but what about when PlayStation acquired studios that are now first party or third party to PlayStation and their games don't come out on other platforms anymore, like Insomniac? We don't expect Insomniac games to come out on Xbox. Why would you expect a Bethesda game to come out on PlayStation?
Yeah.
It's just such a weird mentality that, one side will sit there and be like, you can't do this, you can't do that. But then they say, oh, but still give me those games that I want on my thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there's a pairing. I think again, going back to that book I'm reading about, it's not just that one preference, but there seems to be a whole brand associated with it that is a personality, is other life choices that you've made get associated with this console selection. Like, I know in the past, not so much recently, but in the past, I've heard a lot of people say, "Oh, you're Nintendo. Oh, you're one of those Mario people, or you must have kids, or
They put you in a box.
Yeah, they put you in a box, or you're an Xbox. Oh, you're one of those first-person shooter Halo type people." Well,
No,
Have
I'm
you
a
played
gamer.
Halo?
bit,
Like, have you played Gears of War?
Yeah.
This brings me back to something
more
me and
of
Maria
Assassin's
were talking about
Creed.
the other day. Like, I was talking about
Yeah.
Forza and how amazing and good Forza is as a franchise. From, if you go all the way back to the original Forza, even if you're not a car person, they're great games. And Forza Horizon has a lot for people who aren't necessarily car fans. And I feel like a game like Forza gets so easily overlooked by people who aren't on Xbox. And that kind of makes me sad.
It is a gorgeous game. I'm just terrible at driving, so I didn't get very far in it. I don't drive well.
So what are the consoles selling? And Dan, I hope I'm not taking you too far away from this, but my thought is, what are they getting out of it? They're selling consoles, so the physical device. They're selling their service, the online service that they provide, which is like that constant income that they've got. And they've got licenses for the gaming companies to release on their console. So I guess that's their income stream. Would something like Google Stadia and cloud gaming start to become a game changer in something like that, where you're looking at something that's exclusively more a subscription to the cloud instead of buying a console?
Well, I think the interesting thing to look at in that concept, when you're talking about cloud gaming specifically, is Google Stadia attempted cloud gaming as a standalone service where you pay monthly, you pay a subscription, not too dissimilar to what we're all used to doing with the online services for Xbox or PlayStation or Nintendo at this point. and giving you a box-free gaming experience with no limitations, no hardware limitations, and they charge you, a flat rate to get access to that service. But on the flip side now, we have Microsoft doing xCloud. And xCloud, so far, is free. It's included with Game Pass or Game Pass Ultimate. And a lot of what I've heard in the industry, they say that this is a better way to make cloud gaming a staple, at least for now, because it seems like it's too soon for cloud gaming because people just don't have the internet infrastructure to support it.
Yeah. I was going to say, worldwide, you just don't have enough people with the kind of internet connections.
Yeah.
Or the budget for the kind of internet connections to play for a good gaming experience.
Yeah.
Or access to it.
I think cloud gaming is definitely a good thing. I think Stadia was a good idea, and I hope that continues to do well. I don't have anything against it, especially for the people that it suits. And Amazon's doing their own thing. They have Amazon Luna. I've tried it. It's not bad. It's like a game streaming service. I can use my Xbox controller if I wanted to. And it's the same thing as Google Stadia, basically. It's just another subscription service that you pay a flat rate for and have access to certain games. As far as the numbers go, like, I know right now, as anyone can tell, the PS5s, the Series X's, they're sold out constantly. Like, the manufacturers can't make them fast enough. So there's still a demand for physical, consoles. And I think that directly reflects that infrastructure question. Sometimes people just don't have internet, but they still want a game.
Yeah.
They still want to be able to play stuff.
Yeah.
So,
for sure. I mean, people also want to own something as well. They want to own something shiny. So if everything's on the cloud, people still want to own something. And so it is a lot to do with, like, maybe the preferences between obviously PlayStation and Xbox as well, is that your PlayStation 5 is big and shiny, like you said, but your packaging was crap, but you still had this impressive monolith that came out, and then it's kind of, but it's shiny, it's impressive, and it's a bragging right. And I think that's a lot of thing that pushes the console war. It's a bragging right to be like, I've got
I
this,
honestly
I've got
think
that.
the Xbox is way more attractive than the PS5.
I don't know.
It's a personal preference.
It's a box.
I think the Xbox is so much more sleek. It's just, I like that. It's literally a monolith because it's a
like
black
boxes.
box. Whereas
I like the boxes.
It's not the white, weird shaped thing that's
Fin.
wobbly if you put it on its side.
Yeah, and sometimes my cat likes to sit on the PlayStation 5 and he puts his foot right on that edge and I can see the fin bending and I'm like, you get the fuck off. So, that's too expensive. That's more expensive than you are. Get off.
Yeah, get off.
But yeah, and I think it is. There's a lot of bragging rights. And I kind of wonder, what is the age limit, not limit, but what is the age range of the people that are competing in these console wars? Is it a younger teenager, like this male ego thing that happens where it's this kind of
It seems like it's predominantly
measuring of weenuses or whatever that
yeah,
they keep
weenuses.
doing?
Yeah.
Probably because it's just so because it's kind of like people our age, us crusty old people, where you're like, it's a game module. Have it, don't have it, don't care. But there's a lot of these like younger people that are the Call of Duty crazy people that are, the ones that are pushing this console war.
Yeah.
It seems.
People that are already playing competitive games.
Yeah.
I will
or
beg
part
to
of
say that the people who are
esports,
doing
maybe.
this aren't big gamers, because how do they have so much time? I'm too busy playing games.
Yeah.
I got so many
Constantly on the
games.
internet.
Yeah. Just I don't have the
time
time.
to be sitting on Twitter poking people and pouring salt on everyone.
I think in the identity crisis itself, I hate to bring up a West Side Story thing, but I mean,
What's the West Side Story?
that idea, I mean, of like, you're trying to find an identity, the people that you are going to associate with, and an identity for yourself. How do you identify to other people? And maybe that's those people. Maybe that's they're latching onto it because they're like, I am an Xbox person, and You know,
I also
I
see it as
am
people
a
being
personal
defensive.
brand.
I see it as people being very
I don't know.
defensive, like
Yeah,
especially because
yeah.
Xbox is very aggressive right now, and they're coming out the gates swinging all the time. They constantly have news about Game Pass. They're constantly working on or revealing new things, and like I expect E3, which is going to be here in a few weeks, 2 weeks for E3. I think Xbox is going to come out the gates hard. It's still going to be a while. They've got stuff cooking, and so does PlayStation. People don't complain about the PlayStation exclusives taking 4, 5, 6 years to make. But
True.
an Xbox exclusive takes 2 years, and they're like, "What the fuck?" Like,
Halo 50 and
Well,
3010.
you brought up Brian Altano because he's a known like PlayStation like person. He's on PlayStation podcast, and it was like when he said, "I've actually been preferring to play my Xbox," it was almost like the internet exploded, like with people essentially calling him a traitor. And I'm
Yeah.
like, that's not cool. Like,
Yeah.
let him play whatever
No.
the hell he wants to play. Like, he's obviously
Yeah.
preferring it for a reason because Xbox is doing things right with the Game Pass stuff right now. So, let him play what he wants to play. My God.
I mean, that's the underlying thing. Let people play what they want to play. That's the underlying rule to it. But there is definitely that. I remember when I got my PS5, I was streaming stuff, and I'm like, streaming PS5. Then I got my Xbox, and I was like, I'm going to stream this. And I found out that all the games I was streaming happened to be on the Xbox. And then internally, I'm like, people are going to think I'm preferring the Xbox over the PlayStation 5. I need to swap it up a little bit. And you're like, oh no, I'm changing. I want to have like, Xbox PS5 the musical, and we're going to go to battle in the streets, and it's just
Yeah.
grow up. It's like, I'm going to get your Xbox, going to get your PlayStation.
What am I thinking? I'm thinking of the Michael Jackson video with the knife fight now.
But yeah,
Beat it.
it's
The Beat It video.
Exactly. I'm like, I'm gonna have to do like a Photoshop or something with the Xbox and the PlayStation, like holding
With knives.
hands and knife fighting.
Nice.
But I want to go back to Brandy mentioning Brian Altano and like the fact that like it's also like the IGN stereotype of people assume IGN's a bunch of like paid off, like they just say what they're told to say, and
yeah.
they're just people like trying to make a living. They're trying to do a thing that in this world is very difficult because they have the social media aspect of things where they're trying to do a job of telling us what they think of a game. They're trying to provide us a service of saying, you know what, this game's good, this game's not so good, maybe don't get this game. This is where we're trying to help you decide where to spend your money. Make informed decisions, make informed purchases. And they're being ostracized.
Yeah.
Left
I
and
found
right.
I find that with like a lot of these platforms, especially IGN, I follow them on Facebook and stuff, and I usually find that if they don't agree with the mass hate on something, they're being paid off. Like there was a whole, when The Last of Us 2 came out, there was a whole thing of this is terrible, it was a terrible game, and IGN was like, it's a good game. It may not have went the way you wanted it to story-wise, but it's a good game. And everyone's like, you've been paid off by Sony, and rah, 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 rah. It's like, it's a good game, shut up. So it's just, I don't know.
The same thing happened with Death Stranding. Like when they gave Death Stranding a 7, oh my God. Like everyone was like,
The world blew up.
you're out of your fucking mind. How dare you give a Hideo Kojima game a 7? And it's like, it's kind of boring.
It is. It's the walking simulator.
Like,
So, yeah.
I've never had any urge to play it ever.
It's Norman Reedus walking.
Yeah.
like I love
And
Hideo
looking
Kojima.
greasy,
I love Metal
as
Gear
usual.
Solid, but I have very little interest in playing
Yeah.
Death Stranding. I'm sorry. Like,
Yeah. And it's that mob mentality of like, you need to like what we like, or you're out of the group. And there's that divide between PlayStation and Xbox, and it's like, and if you don't like what we like, you're not one of us.
yeah.
So it's
One
just
of us.
We just need
Well, and
cross-play
it's-
on everything. That's
Yes.
what we
Yes.
need.
Yes. That's
And then
the
nobody
way
should give a
of
crap.
the future.
Well,
Yeah.
even with crossplay, you're not going to be able to play Uncharted on Xbox, and you're not going to be able to play Halo
I
on
know.
PlayStation.
Right.
But you will be able to
No,
play
but-
Halo and Gears and all the other Xbox games on your PC.
Ooh.
But Bungie announced being able to play Destiny across all of its platforms.
Mm-hmm.
And they are actively working on it. And I don't know
Yes.
if you heard that they accidentally turned it on.
I did hear about that.
Accidentally.
They accidentally turned it on when they did a release. Yes. I was not on when that happened, but that I have to wonder sometimes if that was intentional. So some people
Maybe.
let things leak intentionally to get hype going.
Mhm.
And I have to wonder if that's part of what that was. But I'm looking forward to that with Destiny, because I have so many people that I want to play with that are scattered across the 3 platforms, and I'm like, oh god.
Yeah. It's super nice to be able to like hop into a game and we play across the board with our friends who are on PC or PlayStation. Like
Yeah.
the few games that actually do support it and support it well are like Apex Legends and what else is there? I think Apex is the only one. That's the only thing I can think of right now that I've played with someone on
Yeah.
PlayStation and PC and Xbox all at the same time.
Yeah.
But that's the ideal situation, and it's like, yeah, great. I'm gonna buy it on Xbox. You can buy it on PlayStation. We'll still be able to play together. Great.
Is Outriders
Fantastic.
completely crossplay?
Yes, Outriders is completely crossplay.
Yeah, because we played a little bit,
Yeah.
but it was mainly Xbox and PC, I think.
I think Among Us was so successful because of the fact that someone could just grab their mobile phone and play
Yeah.
it, or they could sit down on a PC,
PC.
and play it.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think that was almost a proof of concept for a few people to realize, hey, if you really want your game to blow up, make it crossplay. Make
Yeah.
it really easy for people to access.
Oh,
and
for
play.
sure. And that's part of even Xbox's initiative now too. They're like, we want you to be able to play the game wherever you can possibly play it. So a game
Yeah.
releases, it's coming to console, it's coming to PC, it's coming to mobile. You can stream it to your computer, you can stream it to a tablet, you can stream it to your phone. Like, you can literally load up Gears of War 5 on an iPhone and play it with touch controls. That's fucking bonkers.
Yeah.
It's not fun to play like that, but it's bonkers that you can.
It's
And that's
crazy.
going to incentivize the different consoles to do things to set themselves apart too.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting what people think is money loss in certain consoles. Like they have to keep this divide between the 2 consoles where it has to be either PlayStation or Xbox, and people think that crossplay is like, well, that's gonna droop the console sales. It's the same thing with like co-op gaming. People are like, well, if we have them on 2 different consoles and online, people have to buy the 2 different consoles and they have to do it online. But then when they introduce a multiplayer couch co-op game, it's a massive selling game. And that's what people want. So people want to be able to play together. And so that cross-platform thing is going to be better in the long run for the console races, because people are like, I can just, if I want a PlayStation controller, I can have a PlayStation controller. If I want an Xbox controller, I can have an Xbox controller. You don't have to have that one or the other. It's like you're hurting yourself by making this divide. You really are. And if you're appealing to real gamers want to play games. We don't give a fuck about where we play it on.
Right.
So, yeah.
And it'll take away decision fatigue too. Some
Yeah.
people don't have a console because they can't decide what console they want.
Yeah.
If it doesn't matter, suddenly
Get anyone. Get the one
yeah.
you think looks the best.
Yeah.
So, which one do you prefer? That's what it comes
be
down
like
to.
a PC.
Yeah.
It'll be like a PC. It doesn't matter who's selling the PC, that it all does the same stuff.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. And I think that's a good time to wrap this up. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming here and rambling about this ridiculous concept. Does anybody have any closing statements?
You can tell we're a little biased. It's funny, we're biased that we want peace.
We just
We're
want
biased that
peace.
we want peace.
We just want everyone to grow
Our
up.
position on the console wars is that we don't have a position.
Just play the game.
My position is I just want to play games.
Yeah,
And now I want deadpan panties. Sorry.
Get him
All
shipped.
we are saying is give peace a chance.
Oh, man. MST.
That's why you don't have
Sorry.
good podcast now.
All right, that'll do it. that'll do. That'll do, donkey. I could not find that gift. Anyway, thank you guys so much. Have a good night.